The Cowboys entered the offseason with just few holes, but they've really taken two big swings as they've traded for Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks. Of course, the average response is to think that it's just Jerry Jones making splash moves that will possibly increase the roster talent but make it less of a team as a result. I think there's something to be said about each move, in particular, that Jerry is as aware of the team as we are, in that he knows they were weak at wide receiver and they needed another corner as well. Starting with the Gilmore trade, which was my favorite of the two moves, there's such a seamless fit between Dan Quinn's cover 3 system and Stephon Gilmore's skill set as a press corner that can just erase a number one receiver like it's nothing. It really opens up opportunities for Trayvon Diggs as well, as he can go back to being the gambler he was 2 years ago instead of having to focus on covering number one wide receivers, as Gilmore will do that and then some. Gilmore doesn't have to be a defensive player of the year candidate anymore, and he's more than good enough to still be a top 10 corner. Considering the Cowboys had to just give up a 5th round pick, I would give that trade an A. Just because I liked the Gilmore trade more doesn't mean I didn't also like the Brandon Cooks trade, as I think it was very nice to ensure that Jalen Tolbert doesn't have to get shoehorned into starting time. Though the Cowboys may be losing Dalton Schultz in free agency, the wide receiver position has never looked better for Dak, as CeeDee Lamb is a legit number one. Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks both are, in my opinion, solid number twos still. So, especially with Gallup coming back from injury now at full health, he can return to being a number two, I think. So, they have a bevy of options at wide receiver when that position was initially going to be possibly a weakness. What I like about the Cooks acquisition too is that it's really a nice fit with the wide receivers they already had. So Gallup can be the contested catch guy on the sidelines, Lamb can be the short to intermediate stuff, and then Cooks can be a deep threat. I would also give the Cowboys an A for the Brandon Cooks trade, but I'm a little bit nervous just because his production has gone down. However, I think that is mostly prescribed to Davis Mills being his quarterback and Cooks kind of checking out maybe a little bit. Either way, he's on a bargain price for being a number two wide receiver, so they have a keeper for sure. Just to be clear, that was a joke, because he's tied for being traded the most out of any player ever. At this point, the only thing I think the Cowboys truly need is one run-stopping defensive tackle, such as Jonathan Hankins. That's something that could rather easily be attacked in one of the later rounds, though, so it's not much of a need. As for perspectives on where the Cowboys rank in the league as a whole, I think the 49ers are going to regress a little bit from last year to this upcoming year. And I think they were pretty solidly ahead of the Cowboys this past year, but the Cowboys have improved as well. So I think now the Cowboys and Niners are about exactly even. As far as Philly is concerned, I don't see why the Cowboys couldn't beat them in the playoffs, because the Cowboys really just have an all-star cast at this point. Both the offensive and defensive lines should be strong, assuming injuries aren't an issue, which they very well could be, as they oftentimes are. After Jalen Hurts' MVP caliber year this past year, I think that Prescott is a tier below Hurts, but That isn't to say that he's clearly outmatched. At this point, I don't really know how you argue against the skill positions either, because they may be lacking tight end, but that's about it. And everywhere else is filled with guys that are really good at their roles. Those are my thoughts on the Cowboys. Let me know what yours are. And also, please be sure to subscribe for more NFL and NBA content.